So we are starting now. Can you hear me? Loud and clear? Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Abdullahi. I'm from the Ministry of Agriculture. Today, welcome to this important event or side meeting for issue of the tackling on agriculture sector and livestock in Somalia. So we have a panelist. We have also remarks, welcoming remarks. So I'm welcoming for Dr. Abdullahi Khalif to give remarks first before we go presentation.
Thank you, Abdullahi. I think I am being heard. When I looked at, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. When I looked at the title of this event, which says tackling the food security problems in Somalia, I still remember, and it is fresh in my mind, when we have declared famine in Somalia in 2011. And I still remember when we have about to say second famine in 5 years' time in Somalia in 2016, 2017. By that time in 2011, Somalia had 4 million people who had food insecure. But today we have nearly 7 million people who are food insecure. So I ask a question to myself on what are we doing really? Are we progressing or we are regressing? I think it is a question which begs to answer. And the food security challenges are multifaceted issues. In 2011, if it was human-made famine, today we have climate shocks, food insecurity-related issues, which brought the people of Somalia again back into food insecure country. So how can we do and what can we do to tackle those food security? Before I answer that question, I also wanted to remind us, from 1960 to 1990, Somalia only faced 6 droughts and 7 floods. But between 1990 and the year 2020, we had faced 16 droughts and 20 floods in Somalia. That is times 5 of the past 30 years, compared to 1960 to 1990, those 30 years. From 2025 to 2040, we are forecasting, again, 16 droughts and 18 floods. So what does that mean? It means Somalia is facing challenges which is climate-related challenges and the shocks caused by climate change. So it requires a collective action to tackle the food insecurity of the country. So what is the government of Somalia doing to tackle on that? We are currently working off the national adaptation plans and the national determinate contributions plans. We know when you look at the climate shocks in Somalia, the most affected are the agricultural land and the grazing land for Somalia. And as we speak, I think nearly 2 million hectares of land has been destroyed by the recent floods. So what are we going to do? I think the government is working on its national transformation plan, and the national adaptation plan is almost being completed. The national determinate contribution implementation plan had also been worked, which identified the 9 priority adaptation sectors, of which water and the agricultural land use are the biggest identified adaptation needs in the country. For example, The water need for the coming 6-7 years until 2030 adaptation programming is 2.16 billion US dollar. The land use and agriculture and livestock adaptation plans identified in the Nationally Determined Contributions Implementation Plan is over 2 billion US dollar. Having those plans, which are also feeding the National Transformation Plan, I think it is time to realistically approach, implement an approach which will make impact in the lives of the communities that had been affected in the climate shocks. And in that case, I know Somalia this year has won the Green Climate Funding, nearly 100 million US dollar, which is focusing on resilience building. I also know there are ongoing programs which is also resilience building, and I am happy to see that FAO leadership and the IFAD leadership are actually in this room, which are part of those big adaptation planning and implementing programs. So in the coming years, or in the coming year, what we really wanted to see as a country is to really see the impact of those programs. And when we talk about the food security in the country, we will not be talking in 3 or 4 years' time that several millions, 4, 5, 6 million, will still remain in food insecure. How can we do this? We must address the root causes of food insecurity. We must address the root causes of food insecurity. We must address the mobility caused by the climate change and utilize the resources available and create and enabling policies to make sure that these challenges are addressed. Having said that, I will conclude that Somalia is now ready. We are working on enabling environment by setting up policies and by setting up plans. And every partner of us, with us, must align with those policies and the programs to tackle these common problems, which we are also working together to tackle them. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullahi Khalif, for your welcoming remarks. Hello, I'm going through the presentation. So the first is a small slide presentation regarding the historical impact in Somalia. Somalia has faced several droughts for the last 40 years. In 2021, 2022, severely impacted. We are one of the most affected fragile contexts, as well as least developing countries. Our economic GDP is also, our economic development GDP is also is 75%. Over 6.6 million people has been affected due to climate insecurity in Somalia. Over 1.2 million people livestock has been lost for the last years. So the second page will be the second page will be also some challenges related into agriculture. In 2022 and 2023, there's a lot of floods, droughts, and impacts in Somalia, which 1.5 million hectares of agriculture has been affected in floods. Over 1.2 million agriculture livestock has been affected. The coastal line in the area is raising. The sea level water is another issue. The level of heating is also going. This is the overall of the impact. In the life of Somalia, the water, the agriculture, health, ecosystem, and habitat, Somalia has been the highest level in terms of life living life. So this is one of the climate in the NDC 2030. Somalia has been projected a budget of 55.5 billion in 2030, which a total of 321 million has been financed in the climate issues. So this is the graph in the sector of different sectors of Somalia. So this is also loss and damage in the projected in 2016 up to 2023. So the most areas of losses of our. This is also the agriculture and livestock in the area of projected for the next 7 years. We have been doing some resource as well as we have been highlighted. This is a potential investment of climate financing in the next up to 2030, which previous LDC is showing $10 billion for the project in the agriculture and livestock sector. So another infrastructure. We have highlighted this. So this is the policy recommendation we have going so far highlighted in the climate smart agriculture, livestock health and livestock feeder, water management, early warning, promoting alternative sustainable rangeland management, and effective coordination and holistic approach of a program. So this is a small presentation. So we are also having a panel discussion. This is a wrap-up from the Somali sector. So we are also having a high-level panel discussion. So we are going to start our panel discussion. First, welcoming to Ambassador Jamal from IGAD. Welcome to the panel. Second is Dina Salah from IFAD, representative as well as regional and East Europe regional director. I'm also welcoming Etienne from FAO as one of the panel discussion. I'm also calling Christopher from UNEP. I'm also calling Dr. Joshua from Adaptation Fund for welcome for the panel discussion. The mic there, and this is the mic also. Thank you. So we will be having each and every panelist. We will have 2 questions as well as giving small remarks from him. Welcome from the panelists. I'm also welcoming the Ambassador, ex-Minister of Planning, as currently also IFAD Director of Climate. Welcome, and the floor is for you. You have 2 minutes to welcome.
Can you hear me? Okay. I think you need to put on these headphones.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Abdullahi. Thank you all for coming, and thanks to the organizers, to fellow panelists.
Yes.
Just quickly, to give you a quick background about IGAD. IGAD was created almost 40 years ago, 1986 in Djibouti. And the reason was basically to respond to what's happening now, something similar. We had devastating droughts in the region. So our leaders then decided to come together and do something about it. And since that time, we have been dealing with similar situations, cyclical droughts, flooding, El Nino, La Nina, all kinds of names. And we're not out of the woods yet. We're still dealing with these issues. So now, what do we do then? Can we give up, or we have to come up with better solutions? I think we can do much better than we have been doing for the last almost 40 years. And it's not only confined to IGAD, it's across the world. We have seen droughts coming back and forth more frequently. We have seen more flooding in areas that never got used to flooding. We have seen more fires, wildfires everywhere. So, and that is because of the changing climate. for us as IGAD, we put together a number of policies and strategies. We have the climate change strategy, climate change policy, we have climate adaptation strategy, we have IDRISI, we have so on and so forth. We have entire center dedicated to data production, early warning system. We have another center created specifically for adaptation issues. We have all the documentation, all the data, everything needed. But that's not enough. And what do we do now? We need to really work with the communities that are impacted by these disasters. We really need to go down to the ground level and invest in local communities. At the end of the day, adaptation is local. If we don't go down and devolve these interventions from top to bottom and reach to those communities impacted by these disasters and invest in them, we will never get out of this cycle. So my message to all of us is to come down from this high level, national level, regional level, come down to the community level, village level, the ward level, and all the way down. So we can actually interact and see what the people need, where the livelihood is, where they need to take the livelihoods from going forward, and what we need to do going forward. Because they know, there's indigenous knowledge. They know how to tackle these issues better than us. So we just need to go down and talk to these people and invest in local. And also, we need to make sure that we invest in the system, in the governance side. Because, for example, in Somalia, there is no shortage of water. There's a plenty of water or there's no water. So the problem is the governance side, the water management side. So we need to also invest in the system to create a sustainability, to create a durable solution, and to make sure that people get out of this cyclical droughts, flooding, La Nina, El Nino, year in, year out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Welcome for Dina Sala. You are the next. So, in effort in Somalia, small-scale farmers are most vulnerable people in rural areas. What are the drivers, small-scale farmers and vulnerable community? How IFAD enhance to the building resilience at the community level?
Okay. So first of all, thank you to the organizers, thank you to the government of Somalia, and all the partners for bringing us together on this very important topic. I would like to maybe just give also a brief introduction of IFAD for those who don't know. IFAD is the International Fund for Agriculture Development. It is a UN specialized agency, but is also an international financing institution. We were set up like IGAD during the turbulent crisis of the early 70s, food and energy crisis. And in 1977, IFAD was established to basically address the very challenging, let's say, issues of the time, which was really how can we meet the demands of small-scale producers. So IFAD's mandate is unique. We work with small-scale producers, providing equitable inclusion for women and youth, but also mostly vulnerable communities in the most remote and marginal areas. So it's a specialized fund to really address the agriculture and rural development of most vulnerable communities. Now, you set the scene in your presentation, so I will basically go straight to the point. But just to say that a few facts here. According to the State of Food Security and Nutrition, the SOFI report in 2023, we're looking at 735 million people who are facing hunger, 1 in 5 in Africa, of which Somalia is not an exception. And we know that also in developing countries, small-scale producers, especially in Africa, produce at least 70% of the food supply. So they play an important role. And that's why for institutions like IFAD, like FAO, and all our colleagues here, it's very important for us to look at what measures are needed. How can we support them? We cannot continue to be reactive. We need to start being more preventive in our actions and more deliberate. And so in IFAD, what we did was we looked at the financing flows. And the shocking thing, even after all these COPs, we're still looking at less than 1% of adaptation in developing countries of the climate finance goes to adaptation to small-scale producers. So it's really, for me, it's mind-blowing. In IFAD, we estimated that at least for adaptation, we need 75 billion a year for adaptation for small-scale producers in developing countries. So we're doing our bit in IFAD. We have increased our climate finance targets to 45%. So for every dollar that we spend in IFAD, 45% has to go towards climate finance, climate adaptation, of which 30% must be for nature-based solutions. But the needs are more, and the needs are huge. So turning to Somalia, it's one of our, actually, it is our fastest growing portfolio. And I'm really proud because this is not just a testimony to our work or financing being available. It's really the commitment and the ownership and the drive of the government of Somalia in recent years to really step up. And we've seen the portfolio grow from 10 million in 2020 to over 100 million to date. So the money is there, at least for now. It's not enough to cover the needs, but we're looking at also how we can be more targeted. And again, going to your point about local solutions, really not just coming with one size fits all, trying to, give supply-driven solutions, but really looking at what is contextual and what affects. So you talked about the floods, successive floods and droughts. I mean, successive droughts followed by floods. And we've seen the impact on the number of hectares, the number of livestock, millions that have been destroyed. And we know that no single season, be it rainfall, can reverse the effects of having 5 years of drought. So what I wanted to say that we have in IFAD now 2 programs going on. The Adaptive Agriculture and Rangeland Rehabilitation Project and the Rural Livelihoods Resilience Project, both community development approaches to restore ecosystems, enhance access to water, and build communities' resilience to shocks. And this community-driven development will empower local communities to take ownership of their resources and to build resilient strategies for themselves. In Puntland, for example, we had, and you were talking about Somalia being one of the most fragile situations, we had a project in Puntland called the Food Security, I think it was Food Security and Sustainability Project and we were able to construct more than 20 shallow wells, install like 37 bubbler irrigation systems, and work on more than 2 kilometers of water pipes. 6,000 people were trained. Again, we should not discount that it's not just about money, not about infrastructure. People need to be trained. Capacities need to be developed of institutions in countries especially that have been affected for many years. And the last point I want to say is, as we're looking at that, we're also looking at strengthening systems to be able to produce high quality climate resilient seeds. And I think we've worked with IGAD on this on a regional level. And we need to continue to also bring in the partners. Private sector is a very important component of what we're doing. And I would really like to see both national but also international private sector stepping up their work in Somalia. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your pointing out the climate resilience and the support Somalia into projects. So going to Etienne from FAO. As long as FAO working for the long projects and you have successfully granted a green climate finance project, what initiative FAO implementing to assist relevant government institutions in policy making as a strategic to address climate change, enhance capacity of institution, as well as improve early warning systems? As FAO assisting government, what to make a decision-making information, what FAO current initiative going to support the government as well as building the institutional government institutions? So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a long question, but I think I'll try to summarize. And I'm very pleased to see that a lot of the people here in the attendance are actually Somali colleagues. So I guess some of what I will be saying is well known to you, and you probably know some of it much better than I do.
FDB is also here.
Well. Sorry, no, I said the majority. I didn't say everyone, and you're very welcome. No, thanks a lot. Also very pleased to have IGAD next to me. I think we're very much looking forward to work together. This is not just about talking about FAO. I think what is important is that we work collectively. We try to achieve common goals. I'm looking at Chris here. Chris he will introduce himself, but is to some extent double-hatted, but mostly his role, as far as I'm concerned, is really to coordinate the efforts of the government in relation to supporting climate change activities, focus, and the financing as well. And I think that's how we should see it. FAO has been in the country for very long. It is historically our largest program, still remains one of the largest now. We've been lucky, together with a very strong commitment. I'm looking at Dr. Khalif of the Ministry of Environment, also Ministry of Agriculture, to have the signing of the project, the GCF. I was in South Korea myself, and very pleased to see that Somalia benefited from this type of funding. It's a first in many ways. It's a first because it's the first time the GCF is investing in fragile context. It's a first also because it's a large amount for a single country, and also because the process itself was fairly fast. And I think it is good that we managed to get this signed quickly, because this is a priority. But none of that would have been possible if we didn't have a common understanding on priority between not just FAO, but all of us vis-a-vis the importance of climate change. I think the visit of the GCF Executive Director back in March and the commitment of the President himself to push this agenda forward is what made it happen. The rest is more a process. And again, we are not going to be implementing this on our own. This is a national priority. Otherwise, let me just say that we are strongly aligning our priorities. Your last slide, or one of your last slide, when you were explaining all the priorities, I mean, there's no need for me to look at my talking points. It's pretty much what you had on that slide that we are doing, and possibly more. But I think our main focus, and within our two flagship programs we have now, is the GCF. It's a large program, but at the same time it is small compared to what the country needs in terms of climate financing. It is 100 million if you add the co-funding over a period of 7 years. So the beauty of it is that it's an integrated program. There's nothing new that FAO will be implementing through the GCF that we haven't done in the past. But unlike other funding where it is very much geographically targeted, where you have certain components only that are funded, or where the time frame for implementation is very limited, this is sort of a comprehensive program. This is the starting point. It's substantial and it's not substantial, but I think, again, we hope for this project to be a catalyzer for additional funding, so that other donors coming on board, including IFAD, I'm sure you have an interest also, and you are engaged already in tackling climate change, will be coming on board and sort of adding their funding to this existing contribution. In terms of support, we have provided some support over the years, but I must say also we are, in my 5 years, let me put it that way, we are working with a very different government in terms of capacity, and I'm looking at the Ministry of Agriculture, colleagues here from the Ministry of Agriculture. There's been a lot of laws that have been adopted, one today even, I understand, or yesterday, and I want to congratulate again the government and the various ministries for having pushed forward so many of these really crucial laws. I guess there's going to be more questions, so I can address additional points, but let me stop here for now.
Thank you very much for your pointing out about supporting the government. Coming, UNEP, as Christopher, UNEP is mandated about environmental protection facing climate change. What initiative, UNEP, and strategies are you going to implement to enhance environmental protection in Somalia?
Brilliant, thank you. And just a couple of points. I think just want to reiterate what my colleagues were saying about the importance of collaboration and getting behind. I think what was really, really important would be getting behind some of these key government documents. So the National Adaptation Plan and the National DC, the NDC, should be the sort of guiding documents here for food security, as well as, you know, the rest of the approach. And I think we've heard it quite loud and clear from the financing mechanisms, both the Adaptation Fund, but also I think GCF, that unless we are behind the NAP as a country and all our implementing partners, we're not gonna receive the funding, right? So I think it's really, really important that everybody reads these and includes these documents and gets behind the leadership of the government. So I think that's really important. I think the other important thing I want to notice is around ecosystems, right? So I have a slight bugbear with climate smart agriculture, just because I feel like some people just think it's a seed and then you put it in the ground and then that's it. But unless you have an ecosystem and a nature and the understanding of how the ecosystem works, how you restore the water, keep the water, how the soil is there, the agriculture won't work, right? So I think that we have to work in balance with the nature and the nature ecosystem. So I just would really like to sort of also point to the MBSAP that the ministry's got in place as well. I think the other thing is around transformational programs. So I think Etienne was a bit, he didn't mention it, but the Johar Offstream Reservoir Program is, we're going to get to that. Okay. Next question. Okay, cool. All right. Anyway, transformational programs I think is key. And I think the fourth thing I just wanted to make point is around, you know, climate projections. So the World Bank Climate Vulnerability Assessment, as well as the weathering risk report that's been done on Somalia, quite clearly sets out where we're going. And we know in the next couple of years that we're going to have probably, you know, less likely to have a rain season. So what does that mean for agriculture? What does that mean for our programs and policy? But just to answer your question, UNEP is very much engaged in the sort of nature policy coordination center, and we have an adaptation fund program coming up this year. We also have, as part of the JOS program, so there's a few other programs we have in the pipeline as well. But I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for pointing out. I want to welcome Dr. Joshua from GCF, from Adaptation Fund. Sorry, from Adaptation Fund. The Adaptation Fund is supporting Somalia, as well as you have been supporting and financing climate resilience projects. As you're aware, you have recently supporting UNEP as well as IFAD's also on the pipeline. In how the ongoing challenges and limited resources in the fragile context, how the fund is ensure the countries receive prioritized in attention to the related of climate adaptation and climate financing.
Good afternoon to all of you. Am I being heard well? Thank you very much for inviting the Adaptation Fund to be part of this program. Indeed, it's really good because for us to be able to advance, we need the supply side and the demand side. So putting the funds together with those that are on the demand side in terms of programming, for us to have this conversation, we really appreciate that opportunity. I was going through the presentation that you did in terms of your NDCs, and I really love where you do the projection in terms of how much funding that you need, because it also allows us to be able to understand the investment potential in each country and how much funding that is needed. But basically, let me quickly introduce the Adaptation Fund. The Adaptation Fund was established in 2001, but we became operational in 2007. We started our first programming in 2010 as a result of the flow of funding from the Kyoto Protocol emission trading system. But that was not successful, so we started receiving donations from government, and that is what we have been using to program. Each country has a $20 million cap, and I'm happy to indicate that both IFAD and then UNEP has a pipeline which has all been endorsed, and hopefully this would be endorsed in the next coming board meetings, and perhaps this project will be implemented as fast as possible. So you still have a $5 million opportunity to present the project to be able to assess that. In addition to that, Somalia can join other countries to submit regional projects. which is around $40 million. And we have also introduced innovation projects and LLA, which really ties into what Ifat said. Small entities at a local level, there is financing gap. So looking at that financing gap, we've created the locally led adaptation finance, which is around $5 million. So Somalia, you can work with your entities to be able to submit project for this as well. And we also have the complementarities and coherence where we are working with GCF. So there is opportunity for you to even scale up the two projects if they are approved and you are in the midterm of implementation. You can scale up this project through the GCF where you'll be able to access more funding. Since there will be more questions, I would end here. Perhaps if there are questions too from the floor, I'll respond. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for giving clear clarity and for supporting Somalia, as well as the current funding opportunity that can Somalia. So I'm also going the second round questions. In terms, I will start my ambassador and ex-minister Jamal. How IGAD is addressing transboundary issues related to scarcity of resource, natural resource. At least what IFAD is making to advocate climate financing, since you are the Center Director of Climate Issues. So over to you.
Thank you very much. I was just looking at that book, Climate Change Impacts on Transboundary Resilience.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Now, I was just looking at that code there, that climate change impacts are often transboundary in nature. So that, I think, whoever put it there, that answers your question. But to elaborate more, climate change doesn't recognize borders. So our response should also be the same, that we cannot confine ourselves to within one jurisdiction or country. We need to have this regional collaboration and work together. Either by responding or by putting together anticipatory actions or measures in place to make sure that the impacts are contained and they don't cause the suffering and the damage you see every day in the media or in the data we report. So that's one. Second, we have mechanisms in place, whether it's climate finance, whether it's climate security, or whether it's resiliency building, or we have best practices in a number of countries in the region. And within IGAD, they're not all the same. Member states don't have the same capacity, they don't have the same response mechanisms, but the issues are the same. Lack of strong institutions in many parts of our region, a lot of debt-related issues that consume most of our income, most of our taxes, that instead of us investing that in our countries, we pay back some of these creditors. The issues of security and fragility is also is one main issue that many of us share. So we have mechanisms in place. Imagine in IGAD we have two critical policies. We have the transhumance policy, and that was done as a result of these droughts. People and animals move cross borders and move around. So in order to ease these movements, we have a regional policy. Second is the IGAD free movement policy on free movement. So Article 6 or 16. So IGAD member state communities can cross borders when there are disasters without any issues. So because of these interventions, because of these crises, we have put together policies in place where when something happens, we don't have to wait for governments to act. People can easily move with the animals, move cross borders, but we have to make sure that the resources follow. So if we have people displaced by drought or flooding in one of the member countries, when they move to other country, the neighboring country, we need to make sure the resources are there. The host community is given the adequate support they need to accommodate them. And we need to make sure that we work on returning those productive members of the community that move from their areas back to where they came from, to make sure that we don't force them, we don't support forced returns, but we support them voluntarily to go back to where they come from and produce take care of their livelihoods, essential. So we have many policies in place, but these policies will not become useful if you don't add resource attach resource to them. We're glad that we have the adaptation fund here, and we have the key partners, UN and IFAD. If we put our heads together, if we manage whatever differences we have in terms of implementation models and consider what's happening really on the ground, I think we can have a huge impact. And I'm sure all of us are on the same page when I'm saying that, because I have seen when we work together what we can achieve, and I've seen when we don't work together, the disasters that can happen to the communities on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for pinpointing the transboundary issues. As I'm following the same as Dina, what strategies can you implement Somali pastoralists to adapt and the impact of the climate change while ensuring the sustainability of livelihood and ecosystems coherent?
So thank you again, and I couldn't agree more with Ambassador Jamal. I think it's very important that we we look at this in a very coordinated, collaborative spirit, because at the end of the day, our objectives are all very much aligned. So in terms of, first of all, we all know Somalia is known as the land of milk and meat. And I think you boast some of the world's largest population of camels, but also of small ruminants, and agro-pastoralism is actually the essence of the livelihoods and the agricultural practices. So this really what defines the Somali, context. And we also know that fragility is multidimensional. It's not just, a economic issue, or it's not just climate specific, environmental, but it's a lot of things. It's social, it's institutional, it's political. So whole dimensions that play into and create that vulnerability and the fragility. So what strategy then, when you have something like that confronting you? For me, it has to be a holistic, natural resource management approach. It has to be something that takes into account all these factors and able to respond to them. And again, I go back to what I said earlier. It needs to be context specific, because in some cases, it could be something that is actually purely climate induced. And in other areas, it could be a mix of things. So it could be one that is actually man-made, but also has been exacerbated by climate, and also there are weak institutions there. So we have to think in a holistic way, and then we have to respond, and our responses, as we're hearing around this table alone, we have so much to provide in terms of not just about technologies and practices, the policy space. How do we open that policy space really to have enabling policies to be able to be more effective? And how can we come with the expertise from FAO and from UNEP, and also the financing from the Adaptation Fund and from ourselves, bring that together and really respond to the crisis, or to whatever approach or that we need to have. So for me, I think the simple answer to this is a holistic approach, a holistic strategy, one that also looks not just, as I said earlier, at reactive, but it has to be preventive as well. How can I think we know a lot more now than we did before, and technologies are there. Can we also look at how digitalization can help us to respond, and look at it from both a short, medium, and a long-term strategy, so that we are able to respond and to tailor our initiatives based on these strategies. So with that, I think we've had lots of projects also in Somalia, and I think we can build a lot on the lessons learned and the collaboration between the partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much for pointing out. Etienne, again, in FAO, there is, can you give us some examples of FAO successful projects and technology and innovation is related to climate, as well as one of the issues you touched about, JOS project? Can you give us a small highlight on other successful projects that can mitigate climate issues?
Thank you very much. There was also a question, I think, earlier on data. And I think it's important, and I'm not saying that because my answers are tailored to that question, but because data is important. I've been going around different forums here, and everybody mentions data. the lack of it, or the reliability of it, or simply people not using the data that is available. So I think in Somalia we have a mix of the three. In FAO we have two flagship programs that do provide and generate data, and again most of the people here will have known and heard about them and used those data for many years, 20 years and plus. One is from the Food Security Nutrition Analysis Unit that is also hosting the integrated phase security classification that classifies people in terms of their level of food insecurity. That has been the basis of defining not just the humanitarian caseload, but also projecting and strategizing, moving ahead from purely humanitarian-driven intervention, moving into development. So that is something we are continuing, but we are also gradually handing over to the government. We already have some small examples where this is operating, and that's ultimately the goal. Likewise, SWALIM, the Somalia Water and Land Management, is generating information on what is even more relevant to what we're talking here in relation to weather forecast, floods, river levels. And I will take two examples. Chris, you mentioned, and it was also in the slide, okay, we're anticipating another dry spell. We are already witnessing it now, and the forecasts are indicating that this might prolong over next year. And so we have, based on the information that we have through SWALIM, we have initiated our La Nina response plan together with SODMA, and that's part of our anticipatory action thinking. And anticipatory action is not just a response to anticipate some intervention that are purely humanitarian, but it's also basically building the resilience, which in turn reduces your caseload for the next crisis that will occur. I'll take another example is the floods we had, the 1 in 100-year floods. That was severe. That was pretty much as projected. So I'm talking about a year and a half ago. And again, SWALIM and together with the government, we managed, I can say proudly, collectively, to save lives. Compared to previous episodes of floods with a population which was almost half of what it is today, we had a far greater level of casualties. So SMS early warning and also using satellite imagery to help populations to move to higher grounds. So this is all part of the work we're doing. Yeah, let me stop here for now. And will there be a third question, or should I?
No, thank you very much. Was one or two example of the successful ongoing project is like.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay. So I will. I will eventually mention the JOSP. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Okay, the GCF is something we talked about. The JOA Offstream project is another interesting project because it does. Okay, just leave it there. It does tackle the issue of too little and too much water, and I take the quote from the Deputy Prime Minister who said that in one of the first meeting. Again, this is the sort of projects we want, not only because they answer to a government priority, which again is handling the broader question about around water management, but it's also because it's an excellent, and we need to implement, and we'll see with time. We're still at the very early stages, but it's an excellent example of how multi-donor, multi-sector, multi-year, and multi-agency programming can work and needs to work moving forward. So of course FAO has led this initially, but UNEP, UN Habitat, UNIDO, HCR, I think are part of this, or IOM rather, and that's the way forward. And I think the government has highlighted often this project, and there is a strong accountability, and all the government's aspect I think is important, as you all mentioned, So the government will play an essential role in ensuring governance and of course also implementation. But again, I think looking at the magnitude of what Somalia needs, it is only if we work together. As much as I said, we have a large program moving ahead, because also funding is declining. So moving ahead, none of us as a single UN entity will make a difference if it is not that we work together.
Thank you very much. I'll also give the Christopher. Since UNEP integrates local knowledge and best practice in addressing climate impact in agriculture and livestock, what UNEP-led projects that have successfully mitigated environmental impacts on a food system is related in Somalia?
Yeah, thank you. So there was an example in Mataban that we did with IOM. It was called Digan Bile. The idea is around reducing this competition over natural resources. So it's about how do you bring communities together to understand climate change and then try to use the knowledge and local knowledge to come up with solutions, local solutions. A lot of those solutions are over grazing lands and agricultural sort of solutions as well. So using IOM's match funding program, we did a whole piece of work where we invested in solutions together with communities, and we got innovative funding mechanisms in to do that as well. So it was quite an interesting program. The other one was another Digambinin program in Galmudug, where we worked on trying to reduce some of the sand dunes that were coming over agricultural lands. So we planted certain types of trees to reduce the sand dune encroachments. So these sort of nature-based solutions are really important examples. I know we're running out of time, so I'll pass it on.
Thank you very much. Again, the issue was the scarcity of financial as well as inadequate of funding related to climate shocks. Can you tell us about, in terms of accreditation, Somalia doesn't have much accreditation partners except the UN and who are here. So as adaptation fund, how can we maximize resource and how can we access? You mentioned about the regional funding. Window is available for partners, as well as there is a small allocation Somalia, which is around 5 million remain. So how can we maximize that resource? How partners can access that in order to mitigate climate impact into fragility? So thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. The needs for climate finance keep increasing. And even previous estimation, we've not been able to meet it. So one of the best way to address fragility or implement projects in fragile country like yours, as you asked me in your first question, but because I knew this question was coming, I kept on that, is to build local institutions so that local institutions will participate in the programming process. Though UN partners are doing great, but we also want to get the UN entities building institutional capacity. So we have the direct access process. And the Adaptation Fund is the first multilateral climate fund that really introduced the direct access process, where we identify local entities, then the government will nominate the local entity, and as of now, you can nominate a maximum of 2. So if you work with a government institution and you have a history of programming, then what you need to do is to identify the NDA, the National Designated Authority, so that they will nominate you and send a letter to the fund. Then once you are nominated, we take you through 12 processes in terms of evaluating whether you have the policy in place on gender, you have policy in place in terms of environmental and social safeguards, whether you have money laundering policies in place. So we evaluate you on these. Then once you are cleared, you can start sending project to us and you can implement a project with us. I think that is one of the best way that we can implement projects in fragile, vulnerable, and conflict countries, because these institutions really understand the local context very well. And for that matter, when they are implementing projects and even there is political instability, they might find a way to be able to continue programming. Even if it is not within a fragile context, it is important that we build institutional capacity, right? So we look forward to receiving 2 nominations from the Somalia government, and our partners here will attest that our processes are quite fast. I'm sure when you submit a project to us, within 3 weeks, you should receive feedback from the adaptation fund. And I would say the same way that happens when it comes to accreditation. We are small, but we are very fast. And we want to make sure that we do not delay access to finance. It is not when we think that you need the finance, it is when you need it. So we want to make sure that access to finance is quite fast. And with your support, with the nomination of local institution and getting accredited, we should be able to increase the demand side. Because when we come to COP, we are coming to tell the donors that we need money. We can only tell the donors we need money when we have a long pipeline of projects. So whilst the UN partners are submitting projects, we look forward to also building local institutions as direct access institution that will send projects, that we can have a long pipeline, then we can be able to present that there is demand for what? For funding. After doing your NDC and your NAP and projecting how much you need, those are policy documents. Those are policy expression. You cannot implement them. You need to develop a project out of them. So we can really demonstrate to the donors that these are the needs based on the project that you have, the pipelines that you have. So we look forward to your nomination and we will fast track it just like the project approval process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, our second table conclusion has been ended, our 1 hour. So I will give our participants to have 1 or 2 questions regarding relevancy panelists. If there is no question, so we will close. Thank you very much for our panelists. Thank you for your respective response. And thank you for also Adaptation Fund for this panel discussion. We appreciate and we request more funding regarding to the climate issue. Our donors, our implementing partners are here. So thank you very much. I think appreciated. Good luck.